Hello and welcome to Bonus Action Dash. My name is Jaren and this is Sunday D&D Prep, a show on this channel in which I pull back the curtain and show you what I do to prepare to run a session of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically, I am running the 5th edition published adventure Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden, preparing as you see here for session 56. It's in the final few sessions of the campaign. We are almost to the very end. Been running this for about a year and a half now, and it is time for the end game. So I'm very excited. As usual, what we see here today in today's show are the notes that I will be using into in tonight's game. That said, I've done a lot of work already ahead of time, and a lot of the work that goes into this is simply me thinking about the campaign, thinking about what happened last session, coming up with ideas in my head, and then finally getting to the computer to sit down with all of you and type them out. I've done some of the typing out already, so you don't have to sit here and listen to me type. Additionally, there is a fair bit of Googling and reading of the material, of the source material to gain inspiration that I'm certainly not going to do in a recording, but this just shows you sort of what I have ready to go before the campaign, before the session starts. I am going to use these though tonight in tonight's session, so this is the real deal. So let's get into it. Last time, where we left off last time was the fight with Iriel Arthas. Let me actually navigate to where I need to be. How about that? The party picked up right outside of the Spire of Iriel Arthas in the High Court. They had just found Esther, who is a side NPC, friend of the party's. I have 4 players in this party in this campaign. We have, actually, let's go through that first, kind of give some context. I have Sarah Gritz, who is our female human caster. She's Wizard of the Scribes. Jack Forrest, aka Wabajack Forest Walker, who is a male Warforged fighter. He's an Echo Knight fighter. Does the cool thing where he gets to summon his Echo and use that as a meat shield and as a distraction, and to sort of attack from different sides. We have Mars's Ramazi, who is our Tiefling Barbarian. She's the Ancestral Guardians, the Path of the Ancestors. I always forget exactly what it's called. And then lastly, we have Gwendril, who is a male Tiefling Cleric of Saloon, Twilight Cleric, that super broken subclass that everybody wants to ban in their campaigns. And I guess I kind of see why. The Twilight aura is fairly strong, giving extra temp HP every round and giving everybody the ability to see in dark. Obviously super great in this campaign, as it does take place almost exclusively in the dark. So that's our lineup. The character of Esther is an NPC companion of Sarah Gritz. They were both female wizards from Neverwinter, I believe, and came to Icewind Dale at the beginning of the campaign, sort of side by side. Esther's been sort of with the campaign the entire way, and they finally found her. She came to Ithrin with another NPC, Dazan, and they finally found her in the study of Iriel Arthas in the High Court, unconscious. They brought her back up to health. She kind of explained what she was doing here and how she really just wanted to do her own thing, and she saw Sarah and the rest of the party going off and doing their own cool thing. She kind of felt left out and wanted to come to Ithrin and make her mark. And she got in way over her head as she was deceived by the real Dazan. And now lies here unconscious, and she was brought back and kind of told the party what was going on. The party instructed her. They were like, hey, we're staying at this conjuration tower that's got this mansion. Here's how to get to it. Here's how to get out of the tower. Meet us there and just hang out there for a bit while we figure things out here. And so Esther departed. She had this device with her, this 12-sided geometric device that had a big crack on the side and a murky looking interior, a couple of handles. I had a player, the player who is behind Sarah Gritz, remarked to me that they wanted the end game for their character to be able to traverse different planes of existence, different universes, eventually making an appearance in another campaign of ours. And there is a spell that requires some sort of powerful artifact from that world as a spell casting component. So me including this weird device is basically confirming to the player, not the character, that yes, this is a Tal'Dorei beacon. Minor spoilers, but it's from that universe, because that's kind of where our other campaign is. It's heavily broken, so if you try to use it, probably not going to be a good time. But they rescued Esther. I think she still is in possession of that weird thing. Might be in the possession of the party. I don't quite remember. But they continued on, eventually figuring out how to open this secretive door here in the middle of the starfield. And it was sort of a weird solution because by the book, you're supposed to sit in the chair that belongs to your specific school of magic. We have one caster in the party, which is Sarah Gritz, and she's a wizard of the scribes. And I messaged the player aside separately and said, hey, what school of magic primarily do you think your character is? And they said, well, they're the subclass, the wizard of the scribes, because they kind of wanted to be a good student of all schools of magic. And I think I remember them telling me that at the outset. So it wasn't like a cheap getaway answer. It was a legitimate answer. And so I guess in this context, it wouldn't have really mattered what chair she sat in. I don't think this was a necessary point to be a real hard stickler about anyways. So they did, this Starfield did transform into this portal, basically, this secret door that led them into this study. And here is where we had the encounter. And it was an interesting fight. It was challenging. They have seen Iriel Arthas before. They'd seen him let loose that scream that downed 2 party members in one shot. And I like demi-liches, but they are kind of a one-trick pony. It's sort of like, they do their scream, and then it's kind of their deal. They can life drain you. They've got lair actions and legendary actions, but it's kind of all about their scream. And after that, it doesn't. There's not really much to the fight. So I mean, it was an interesting fight. It was a tough fight. It was close. I think maybe one player fell, and that was Gwendrel. Gwendrel fell in combat, I think, because of the scream. He was like the only character that couldn't resist that scream and fell instantly to 0 hit points. I think one other character did have a potion, but I felt bad for the player. My brother's playing this character, and I kind of felt bad because he didn't really get to do anything in combat. By the time he was brought back, the fight was almost over. So I felt kind of bad. I even paused the game for a second just to be like, hey, does nobody have a potion? Just because I felt, I am here to play things authentically, yes, but I'm also here to make sure that everyone has a good time. And I don't think it's a very good time for one player to be screwed because no one has a potion. So I paused the game. I said, hey, does nobody have a potion here? And it turns out that one character did have a potion. So there was ways that, we could still progress and play it as is. So that was fine. But I was halfway ready to Deus Ex Machina something just to make sure that this character wasn't totally sitting out the entire fight, because that kind of sucks. And this is the end game, and I want to make sure that everyone's able to sort of contribute, without making it easy, obviously. The one thing that was, I guess, sort of lame was this living demiplane. It never hit. It's like a DC 10 dexterity save to see if this plane sucks you in or not. And DC 10 at this level is super easy. So I think in hindsight, I would have increased that DC a bit. Now, the other thing about the demiplane is, I think it could probably really shift this fight in a not so fun direction. Because if a player, I think it's one player at a time, but if they get sucked into this thing, by the book, there's 5 other aggressive creatures in this demiplane. There's 3 Magian and 2 flesh golems. And while that might not be terribly difficult for a party at 9th level, for one player at 9th level, action economy being what it is, could be a real challenge. And I think it would not be so fun for them to die in this fight in a frigging demiplane, I did reduce the number of creatures in here just in case that happened, because I don't think that would be the point of the fight, to have them die in this plane. Overall, I think it was an okay encounter. Not my favorite. As I mentioned, demi-liches are super strong, but they're kind of a one-trick pony. And I also kind of forgot to do the lair actions the first round, I think. And I forgot that one of Iriel Arthas' legendary actions is to fly and just move to a different spot. But whatever, I think the players still enjoyed it nonetheless. They got all the cool loot. They got the a couple of decorative staves that the Aerial Arthas has in possession of him. They got the Staff of Power, Aerial Arthas Incantations, his spellbook. And because they didn't discover the scroll of the comet in the other part of the tower, I gave that to them here too, as well as the scroll of Tarask summoning. So they now have a bunch of really powerful things at their disposal. They return back to the Tower of Conjuration, where the magnificent mansion is located. Not by traversing the hard way, but in my campaign, there was an open window in Aerial Arthas' tower, and this is how Esther got in. Dazan sent her to the very top with the fly spell, and at the moment that Auriel came into Ithrin, passed through the barrier, that's when Esther fell through the top window in the study, and was then kind of chilling in the library here. So there's this broken open window in the study, and with enough abilities to fly and the fly spell itself, the players just flew up and out of that window and down to the study, which is sort of where we ended the session. They are now back in the mansion. They know that Aerial Arthas is no longer attuned to the Mythallar, obviously because he's dead, and they spent the evening recovering, and this is where we leveled up. They're now level 10. One of our characters, Gwendril, had a moment where he's not doing so great. He felt really bad because he's died in a couple of fights. He's been down, especially in that fight. He felt like, I'm kind of useless here. Yeah, you guys are fighting and I'm healing you sometimes, but when it comes to combat, you did all that stuff on your own. I was dead for most of that, or unconscious for most of that. Ever since I've kind of joined up with you guys, it's been not so good of going. Maybe you're better off without me, is sort of his ending sad thoughts. And I talked to the player outside of the game. This was them just heavy RP. They said they assured me that they themselves are okay, that this was just heavy RP, long time coming from Gwendril, his character. And so I'm excited to lean into that. I had to check just because it was such good RP. And there was a heart-to-heart with Mars's and Gwen, where I think between Mars's and Sarah, where she got to talk to Gwen and then was relaying, hey, this character's just being stupid. They're just being stubborn. They're feeling really bad because, they feel like they're useless and want to go off on their own. And I think they're just being stubborn and stupid right now. And so that's kind of where the night left. They took a long rest in the mansion, and we pick up the next day. So that's where we begin the prep for today's session. Sort of our summary. Sarah did talk about the possibility. We had a little bit of discussion about how they're actually going to get back to Icewind Dale. My assumption was that they're going to use the Mythallar to fly the city back to Icewind Dale, or do it the hard way, I guess, which, if you really want to traverse up and out through the glacier, Esther probably has a way because she came a different way with Dazan. And if you want to do it that way, sure. I'm definitely not going to run sessions like in reverse. I'm just going to travel montage it. That's kind of what I thought they would do. I don't know what they're going to do with the Staff of Power yet in terms of giving that back to Veneranda so that they can go back in time. But Sarah did also talk about the use, I think now that they're at 10th level, this might be a spell that she has access to, using a teleportation circle. And I thought, well, that's a neat solution. But then I was stuck because I thought, well, what teleportation circles would exist in Icewind Dale? As written, when you gain access to the spell, you not only get the ability to draw the sigils and create a teleportation circle of your own, the location of 2 others that could connect to that. So one of them obviously is probably going to be like Waterdeep or Neverwinter. I don't really want to have players go down that route of getting out because I have absolutely nothing prepared in Neverwinter or Waterdeep. But the other location, I was thinking about this and looking at it going, well, where in Icewind Dale would possibly have a teleportation circle attached to it? And if we look at the bigger cities, obviously these smaller ones like Dugan's Hole, Goodmead, Bremen, Lonelywood. There's no way that they have teleportation circles. They have like 100 people population max. There's probably not even a wizard there. But the two bigger cities, well, the three cities really, Targos, Bryn Shander, and East Haven, that's a possibility. Bryn Shander maybe being the sort of capital of this collection of settlements. And then eventually, but here's why I didn't want to make Bryn Shander, Targos, or East Haven one of those. Is because my plan was to make either Targos or Bryn Shander the new lair of Auriel. She has seen that the players are kind of intervening with her plans and making some dents and giving the people hope. And so she thinks that she needs to take a more direct involvement in her reign and has now moved her lair to Icewind Dale, maybe on Bryn Shander or Targos, and has really intensified the winter storms here. So I didn't want to put a teleportation circle right there. I also want to give the characters the opportunity to sort of watch from a distance, maybe do some scouting, maybe do some strategizing, seeing what they're up against first. I want to give them the chance to, obviously stock up on some supplies, maybe get some more potions. So I don't want to just plop them in the middle of Auriel as soon as I get to Icewind Dale, right? So the other place that I thought would be an easy pull, an easy place and a logical place that a teleportation circle might exist is a location that I have not used in this campaign at all, and that is the prison of Revel's End. I probably won't use the map, but I think it's not too far-fetched. I don't even remember where it is in this module. Here it is. I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that some distant prison on the shores of the Sea of Moving Ice, maybe for emergency purposes, there exists a teleportation circle. Maybe they needed a surefire way to get prisoners to there in the worst case scenario where transportation was going to be too costly, or they just had to, transport a very powerful wizard or something like that to this prison. There could possibly be a teleportation circle in the prison. I think that makes kind of some sense. At least in my mind, it makes the most sense of any location in Icewind Dale so far. So this is where I'm going to put the circle. I don't know if I'm going to do it in the basement or the very top of the tower, probably the top of the tower. And that way I get to use some cool artwork that I never got to use. It's somewhere. There's some really cool artwork. I think it might be in chapter 2. Not Wilderness Encounters. Maybe it's in the actual... Chapter 2 is laid out very strangely. I know there is a handout of... Here we go. And there should be... Yeah, this really cool artwork. So I'll get to use this too, which I'm all for using as much of the resources that I can. Which will then result in them, maybe some minor roleplay. They get to see the results of past actions as they get to see the fact that there are some members of Trader Torgs still imprisoned here from the very, very beginning of the campaign when they were tracking this roving trading company and hunting down Suffolk Caltro. And they got to see that some of the members of that trading company were apprehended and sent off to prison. I think when we had that part in the campaign, I did mention that they were taken off to Revel's End, but it kind of was a fleeting moment. Players didn't really pay attention, I don't think, because it was sort of just a one-off little thing. But now they can kind of see the results of their actions and see these trading company members in prison, and maybe there can be some RP there, or it's just a sort of an open-ended. I'm probably not going to get into the map just because there's not really a need really for the map, but this could be a place where they could secure some mounts, perhaps, if they're able to persuade the guards of who they are and what they're doing. And then it's going to be a travel montage, because I'm not going to run 5 days, 7 days worth of overland travel just to get to the final boss. That's not interesting to me at this point in the campaign, and we'll do a travel montage to wherever they want to go. If they want to get back to, my guess is Lonelywood and getting back to the Sunseekers Guild Hall. So on my to-do list, that is anything specifically to flesh out Revel's End. Probably not. We'll have a travel montage, which will just include a lot of really intense blizzards. I think we'll kind of like put it at maybe 5 to 7 days worth of travel, depending on how the navigation checks work, how the survival checks work. We'll describe some sparse wildlife, really sort of scrounging for food, and the desolation of the plains of Icewind Dale, and how just in much more intense the blizzards seem to be. Whether or not that's because they've been, in Etherine for so long that now coming back out of it is like adjusting your eyes to bright light after being in the Underdark. It's like adjusting to crazy cold blizzards. It seems way more intense than it might be. Or are they actually more intense? And the answer is they're more intense because Auril has showed up. And then we'll have the RP getting ready for the last encounter. So depending on where they go, that's kind of where I'll need to figure out what we're doing. And for the last encounter, I wanted to, since we're not having it on Grimskala, on the Island of Solstice, it's happening here in Icewind Dale. And as I mentioned, I wanted to give players a chance to scout ahead and to sort of make some strategy as to how they're going to approach Auril. In my mind, it's not simply like Auril standing there out in the open. She's probably set up some sort of throne and series of guards and patrols. And I imagine like a first line is some winter wolves. So I have, I think I might have gotten the map somewhat ready. I think I threw that down here. This is an old map that I never used, or maybe used and I haven't used it in a while. But I imagine there's like a line of winter wolves they have to pass through. And as they get closer, maybe they can see that there are 2 frost giant skeletons sort of guarding Auril. And then there will be the fight with Auril. And if we look at the book, I'm going to use a modified version, actually. But if we look at the book, she goes through these 3 forms, right? Her first form is the familiar horned owl figure. Come on, D&D Beyond, quit messing around. Whoops. We have the familiar horned owl figure, which she can do some... she's got an interesting strategy, which seems to be, since she has flying, and she has these really cool innate spellcasting abilities, that she could sort of attack as like a dive bomber, right? She'll be at a distance of 45 feet, swoop down to a target and either use like talons, or she can attack from a distance too. But if she flies in, she's going to use her talons, and then bonus action, she can unlimited Misty Step. So she'll bonus action Misty Step and then use the rest of her 45 feet of flying, or 60 feet of flying, my mistake, to retreat back even further. So her strategy is to kind of fly in, attack, Misty Step away, and then fly the rest of the distance to stay far enough away. Or if that's not working so well, she can just unlimited Chromatic Orb from a distance. And that's going to be kind of nasty. And also has this Touch of Frost. She has the legendary actions where she can use Touch of Frost or Teleport. And it's... So the first form is interesting, not particularly tough with an AC of 13 and 95 hit points, but still good nonetheless. And then she has these, where is it? 2 legendary resistances in this form. Second form, this is the Ice Mephit form basically. She turns into this crystalline woman made of ice shards that makes this crackling sound as she moves. And she can create ice methods, cast Cone of Cold, this ice stasis, which traps a player in an ice shard. And then obviously more legendary resistances. She can use her Morning Star for melee attacks, do ice flurries. She can even cast this cool thing called Splinter, which destroys an ice method and they burst and deal a bunch of damage. And then the last form, this one a little tougher with an AC of 16, but the last form is this Ice Shard, and it creates this blizzard. I think you have to, by the book, do this as an action, but you can create this blizzard around her, which makes the whole area heavily obscured, which means because she has Blind Sight and True Sight, that means that anybody in this radius, so effectively anybody close enough to attack her, especially melee, is effectively blinded, meaning they all have disadvantage. And because of her true sight, she can still see, meaning she has advantage on all her attacks against the party, which makes this kind of a pain in the ass. And a 19 AC. She still has, I think in this form, she has 1 legendary resistance. There is this frigid aura, which means anybody within 10 feet just takes 10 points of damage at the start of her turns. She's got this strong thing called Polar Ray, which is a plus 13, 4d6 cold damage. And then the last thing is to intensify aura. She can increase the damage of her frigid aura. And, you know, this blinding gleam is interesting, I guess, but it kind of contradicts the Blizzard Veil, which is, yeah, you kind of, you know, Oreo flashes her form with blue light, you make a save, and if you don't, you're blinded. But effectively, you're blinded by the Blizzard Veil anyway. So I think this legendary action is kind of redundant. Now, I am using a different modified stat block, and I think the way that I'm going to run this is not necessarily to run it as written in this modified version, but to have these as a pool of resources that I can decide on the fly. Yeah, we need to include this as well because they're kind of wrecking her. Or I go, well, they are getting their butt kicked, so maybe we don't do this one over here and not necessarily use the entire stack because it's pretty menacing. And shout out to this dude on Reddit, Warm Water Penguin, who posted this a year ago on how to buff Oriel. It's giving her some new lair actions, which I'm not using all of these. But this idea of a lair action being you basically make a Cold Light Walker or a Frost Giant skeleton. We're not doing the cave-in effect. This is more to do with a fight on the glacier, either in the glacier or maybe on her actual island. We're not doing this one. Bitter Cold is sort of okay, but it's just 1d4 for a lair action, so I'm probably not doing that. Difficult Footing, characters make a DC 13 dex save, and they slip and fall on a fail. But this just the idea, of a constant barrage of enemies, I think makes this feel like an epic fight. You know, lair actions being able to summon more dudes is going to make this a challenging fight, and this is just persistent, not just for form number 1. Form number 1, and through all of these, we're giving it more HP because, you know, let's face it, at 10th level, 95 damage is nothing. You know, hell, in the fight against the Arcanoloth, against Scriven-Scry, Jack Forrest burned all of his actions in the first round and did 96 points of damage. And that was against a higher AC than this. So, just saying, I think we need to up this HP against a god, right? It's got to be a challenge. We don't want Oriel's first form getting taken out on the first round. Where was I? So form number 1, we're giving it more HP. We're taking away the vulnerability and resistances and stuff. Resistance to non-magical weapons, but no vulnerability. 200 HP. The create ice method. I like this a lot. Just automatically start of her turn, she creates an ice method. It's not an action that's limited to 3 per day. It's just you create them. And I think this might be for the second form. Yeah, my bad. I'm reading the second form. I'm getting ahead of myself. Form 1, Toughen Up. She gets plus 2 AC while airborne. I like this. Our multi-attack uses Touch of Frost instead of Talons. So in the first form, her multi-attack is, instead of dealing 1d8 plus 3, she gets a plus 13 and just 3d8 cold damage for her multi-attacks. I like that a lot better. And it sort of gives a strategy, like I mentioned, it's sort of to be this dive bomb enemy that will dive bomb in, use her Touch of Frost, and then bonus action, unlimited bonus action to Misty Step, and then she can also just use Chromatic Orb a bunch. I think I wrote notes here. Maybe I did this on the actual Oriel page of what I plan to use. Yeah, the one that I wasn't too keen on was I like this idea of at 50% HP, something happens. This one I wasn't particularly keen on. I'm going to use this as an optional one, but the way that this user buffed her, or as a suggestion, was they at 50% damage. She basically summons a copy of herself, a simulacrum made of snow that is identical but can't fly. And I think that might be a bit much. So I'm probably not going to use this one. And then this one also is optional. This optional regen if she hasn't taken fire damage. That's just cool and thematic. Form 2, toughen up, 200 health. Okay, so back to where I was. Create Ice Method. Now is automatic at the start of Oriel's turn. I really like this a lot. This constant stream of just annoying little things. Ice Methods aren't tough. They're just kind of annoying. And also the trigger that she has in this form, the ability to, where is it? Splinter. This legendary action, she can cause an Ice Method to explode and die. And instead of doing the Ice Method ability of Death Burst, which is when an Ice Method dies, Dex save DC 10, takes 1d8 damage. Instead, well, we're doing something a little different here. I think this might be as written, I'm not sure, but it sort of can chain a reaction trigger this, where it's instead of a DC 10, it's DC 21 Dex save and 3d8 piercing damage, or half. In addition, if another Ice Method is killed by this explosion, it also sort of chain a reaction triggers that splinter as well. So if you got a field full of Ice Methods, it can just sort of cause them all to go off like a minefield. What else? I may not use this one. I do like this 50% health trigger. I like the idea of once she hits 50% health in a form, your turn ends right away and something happens. Because that's cool and unique and memorable. As written here, I may not do this, but as written here, her Ice Stasis, Cone of Cold, and Legendary Resistances recharge. Probably not going to do the Legendary Resistances. They recharge immediately, and she creates 3 Ice Methods. That's pretty sweet. Also giving her the reactions of Counterspell and Shield, each 3 per day. Super cool. It's going to make it a memorable fight. And then she can bonus action hide in a fog cloud created by an Ice Method. Also super cool. Last form, Toughen Up, again, giving her 200 health, getting rid of the vulnerabilities and whatnot. Also, I really like this too. Any radiant or psychic attack, which honestly it might not be any of these, to be honest, or it might not be anything that the party can do, because I don't know that they have any of those. But I do like this idea that if you do try to do a radiant or a psychic attack and it misses, her crystalline form reflects that spell and targets anything that's within the spell's range. I think that's pretty sweet. And this point number 2 is sort of strategy of how to use form number 2, or form number 3, my mistake. The idea that the Ice Methods act immediately after Oriel as written. If we look back to form number 2, where she has this summon method ability, we see that the method acts immediately after Oriel in the initiative order and obeys her commands. So the idea here in point number 2 is you can kind of like stack up these polar rays, right? You can, let's look at the third form. You can stack up these polar rays. On your turn, you use polar ray twice. Any remaining Ice Methods then go right away after Oriel. Legendary actions happen at the end of somebody else's turn, not just enemies' turns. So this could be, so what you could do is polar ray twice on your turn. Your methods go right away after you. At the end of your Ice Methods turn, you use a legendary action to do polar ray again. And you end up casting like 5 polar rays all in sequence and really messing up the party. And also giving her the ability to retain the Shatter ability as a legendary action. This, as a reminder, this is simply a reminder that this is as written, because the Blizzard Veil causes Heavily Obscured, which is the blinded effect, which means you get advantage because of your blind sight. Players get disadvantaged because they're blinded, and also have 19 AC. That's going to be pretty tough. I think I do like this 50% health effect. When Oriel is taking 50% or more of her total health in this form, again, current player's turn ends, Oriel emits a high-pitched, piercing tone. You make a DC 20 intelligence save. If you fail, you take your max health is reduced by 50% for the next 24 hours. And on save, whatever your current remaining health is, you take half of that in damage. I think it's a really cool effect. We're not going to think about Winter's Cruelty on this list because I don't really like the idea of, oh, your character died, now I get to control it. And lastly, this going out with a bang. I might do this, I might not. This is basically when Oriel finally drops to 0 hit points in her third form. You get this series of checks right as the shard makes this final piercing scream and explodes, and you got to see if you avoid the blast or take the psychic damage or have this fear of the cold from now on. I don't know. We'll play that by ear. If it looks like everyone in the group is low HP, probably not going to do it. If like maybe half the party is low HP, we might. And if everyone's at decent health, we'll probably do it. Just to give like a memorable last going out with a bang shot. So that's kind of where I'm thinking for this last fight. And after that, it will effectively be campaign over. Where am I here? Because I guess there is one outstanding thread to wrap up. And here, here's sort of where I'm preparing an Oriel fight. I don't have a very decent map for a final fight. And this isn't the fanciest fight either. I think what I wanted to do, my plan for this was that there was going to be these series of tall ice pillars. And if you knock out the right ones, that takes away some of the abilities that she has. Maybe in the second form, she can't, if you take out the correct one, she can't summon giant skeletons. If you take out a different correct one, she can't summon cold light walkers, for example. Just as a more interactive sort of a fight. But the last thread, which maybe is outstanding, and I don't really plan to make it much of a thing, is what was Shar's ultimate connection? Are they going to try to go back to the Island of Solstice and shut that temple down? Or was it simply Shar at some point made an agreement with Oriel to give her this endless night if she would bring those followers to her, to Shar? And beyond that, she's not really trying to get involved. So maybe it's once Oriel is defeated and hope is returned to Icewind Dale, and it's pretty much shown that Oriel's probably not going to come back, even though she's not really actually dead. And that we'll finally have regular daytime restored as well. Probably is the direction I'm going to go, just because we're sort of running out of source material, and I really feel like the campaign is coming to a climax, and that might, if here is the climax, in the camera, if here is the climax where this has been building the whole time, oh boy, try doing this on a webcam. Maybe we'll do it from this side. Yeah, so if here's the climax, the campaign's been building, and it hits this point, I feel like chasing down anything related to Shar is, on the downward slope, and it's sort of running it past where it needs to end, basically. So I think I'm happy with how the campaign's going, and I'm really looking forward to this final encounter. I think that's probably going to do it. I guess I have a series of secrets that they could discover, which I've kind of gone through already. I guess some last other threads. Dazan, if Ithrin proves to be safe, Dazan wants to stay here, especially true if they end up giving the staff back to Veneranda so she can take Ithrin back in time. And I'm certainly not going to get into the weeds of how time travel works if that messes up current timelines. I'm not going to do that. But if Dazan does go back with Veneranda into Ithrin, happy ending for him. And maybe a sad goodbye for Esther and Dazan as they part ways. That's probably it. The other thing that is sort of weird here is because Ithrin is so close to this artifact that was heavily steeped in chronomancy, time magic, by the time the party gets back to Icewind Dale, they will have discovered, where's my global map here? They will have discovered that it's not the date that they thought. Time has passed slower for them in Ithrin, faster for Icewind Dale, and where they might think it's the 3rd of Tarsak, it's actually closer to the 5th of Myrtul, the next month in the Faerunian calendar. that may be it, I think. That does it for our secrets. Yeah, that's pretty much going to do it here for the campaign. And so we've got maybe this next session of getting back to Icewind Dale, sort of seeing what's going on and planning, and then a session of the encounter. Maybe 2, maybe 3 more sessions, I think. And then my other plan too is we're going to definitely have a post-campaign Q&A where I let them just sit and ask me as players anything about the campaign. I will tell them anything. I'll answer questions about quests they never did, quests they didn't quite complete, what character motivations were, anything that they want to know. I will tell them, because we're not going to play this again, and very unlikely that they as players play this specific campaign again. Additionally, they're not going to play this version ever again because this was my own version. So, gonna answer anything they want and do the critical role thing where post campaign we just Q&A and I let you know everything. So, looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to the next campaign. I get to prep some new content, and you all get to see me prep a campaign from session 0 all the way through, rather than, I think I started this in the 40s. So that's going to do it. Thank you all for sticking with it, and we'll be back to some sort of regular schedule soon, I hope. I'm slowly getting caught up on uploading these prep videos on time and per the schedule. So thanks for sticking around. This is Bonus Action Dash. My name is Jaren, and I will see you next time for more D&D prep.